TV interview or something, you know. I was interviewed by Contact, and, you know, one time, well, actually about 4 or 5 times, but it's like a 2-minute thing, you know, so they sit you in the room and they stick the microphone on you, and then all of a sudden you've got 2 minutes to say everything that you want to say and advertise your event, and then you get done, and then you can't remember that you even said anything at all. And so it's always an experience. So are you ready now? Okay, my name is Carol Arnzen. I'm Executive Director of Offer. I also am a patient. I've had fibromyalgia since actually about 1985, and had an accident which actually, I was an accountant at the time, working 12-hour days, 7 days a week, and had an active life, was getting ready to open up my own accounting practice, and so had my life all mapped out for myself. And obviously, there was a fork in the road, and I went a total different direction than what I had originally planned to do because of my illness. Went 8 years without a diagnosis, and when I finally did receive a diagnosis, it was a real turning point in my life. And I still remember the very first person I talked to that had the illness. And when I first got diagnosed, there was no organization to support people in fibromyalgia, and I was living in Boise, Idaho. And so I got to talking to the first lady, and I remember the conversation going like this. Really? Wow, you have those symptoms too? Wow, there's a name for that? Fibrofog? That's that brain thing? You mean they actually have a name for it? Other people feel that way too? You know, am I losing my marbles? No, I'm not, you know. She shared things, and I was like, wow, I never even thought of trying that. So the whole conversation was, she validated my huge laundry list of symptoms, and made me realize that I wasn't alone. And I think that's such an important part when you're newly diagnosed, is to realize that there are other people out there that are really dealing with very similar symptoms than you are too. And so that knowledge, I think, is very, very powerful in making us realize. Actually, I always say, you know, knowledge is an antidote of fear, is a quote, and I think that's very true with these two illnesses. My very first person that I ever talked to that I can say was my most inspiring person. I had set up a nonprofit in Boise, you know, to help people with fibromyalgia, and we had 10 support groups throughout the valley, and we were really getting going. And so I talked to this one lady. She called our office and said, you know, really like to talk to you. And so I called her up, and she said she was 72 years old, that she'd had fibromyalgia almost all her life. Now, mind you, when I started my nonprofit, I was pretty much bedridden, set up the nonprofit from my bed, most of it, doing all the paperwork that's necessary to do that. And so I was really at that point where, you know, is this going to be my life? You know, this fear of what the next few years, 10, 20, 30 years how it was going to affect me as a person. Obviously, it totally derailed my career path. And so I was very fearful of that. And so I was talking to her, and I said, you know, what was it like? And she said, you know, in my 20s and 30s, you know, I couldn't keep up with anybody. You know, I couldn't keep up with my family, I couldn't keep up with my friends. You know, it was just a terrible, frustrating time, she said, because, of course, I mean, obviously in those days, there was no diagnosis. This was just an illness that she had. But she said, you know, something happened in the 40s, and she said, my friends were calling me up and saying, gosh, I got this pain right here, you know, what do I do about it, you know? And she'd tell them how to use ice and heat and stretch, and she would give them this. And so she all of a sudden became this advice giver for all of their aches and pains of her friends. And she said, you know, when it got to be 50, that she looked around and she kind of thought, wow, they're hurting as bad as I am in some of her friends. Because her friends didn't have to take care of themselves. They weren't. They are actively, you know, doing their lives. And then she said, you know, at age 60, she said, between 60 and 65, all of a sudden I realized that because I had stretched and I'd exercised and I had ate, you know, good, and I had taken care of myself and tried to, you know, get my sleep. She said at age 72, her quote was, not one of my friends can keep up with me. Now for me, listening to that story was my hope, you know, my feeling that, okay, I'm at crisis, I'm in bed, I'm trying to make some level of life for myself. But for me, that was such an inspiring story for me to realize that maybe there was hope that I would be able to go from this crisis stage to a life that was a good life. And so really, I think what my goal today is for our panel is to give you hope too. In fact, offer, if you've seen our little bracelets around that we're selling, our awareness bracelets, it says offer hope. And I think that is something that we want to be able to give, is that hope that life will be better. I just want to just kind of get a poll. How many of you have fibromyalgia? Okay, and chronic fatigue? Okay, and how many of you support people? Looks like we got a good group of support people. Well, good. So how many of you just been diagnosed like within the last 6 months or 6 months? Okay, so you're very newly diagnosed. And within a year? Last year? Anybody over a year here? Okay. Just kind of get a feel of where you're at. Well, the panel here today I've got is Joyce Day. She has chronic fatigue, and I'll let her tell her story a little bit later. And then we have FMS. Oh, sorry about that. And then we have Peggy, and I've asked Peggy to come as a support person. She has a daughter that has chronic fatigue, and so she will be talking a little bit about, kind of give us a perspective of the support person and how that works. And then I've asked Lloyd, and we had a couple of cancellations on my panel, so I've just commandeered him today. And no wonder you're nervous. And he's going to give us the male point of view a little bit. You've had chronic fatigue?
I've had chronic fatigue. I was diagnosed in April of 2002.
Okay. So that's kind of who we are. And I've just asked the panel to speak for about 5 to 7 minutes, just talking about some of the lessons they've learned since they were diagnosed, and I always call it the journey, because I think that's what it kind of is for, In fact, I coined a new phrase, because I'm always telling everyone, if you've had this illness for 10 years, then you've got a PhD in it. And I've decided the other day as I was driving down the car, I thought, I wonder what that really means. And I thought, what it meant to me was going from pain to hope to being able to accomplish some of dreams. And I think that's kind of what happened a lot in my life, is that, I've been obviously I was bedridden for a number of years, and being executive director of Offer is quite a feat that I would have never, ever thought that I would ever be able to accomplish in my wildest dreams. So I feel like that's kind of a journey that I've made. But anyway, we'll each panel will talk, and then what we're going to do is open it up for some questions from you guys and see if we can extend to you a little bit of our life experience to you, and maybe give you and help you out a little thing. So if you want to jot down some of the questions, if you think of something while we're talking, jot it down, and then we can do it through the question and answer period. So, and I'll let Joyce start.
I'm really wanting to be calm, and I really had hoped to memorize this, but I can't memorize stuff anymore, and so I'm going to be doing some reading, and I'm not as calm as I want to be, so...
That's okay. You'll do good.
Anyway, I've had chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia for approximately 15 years. Before that, I was a wife. I'm still a wife, but I have my husband does the wifely duties, and I just adore him for being able to make that transition. We cook together, but he does the shopping, the house cleaning. I do the washing. So it's really changed. But I'm glad I still have him, and that he's who he is, because he's made life so much easier for me. So for you support people, I encourage you, because your people with CFS and FMS will adore you more than they ever have for your help. I was a mother. My kids are grown now, and I was an art student. Made huge paintings. Can't do that anymore. I was a computer programmer, a scientific programmer with Unisys, and I was a skier and a hiker and a camper, I was an aerobics enthusiast. I loved cooking. I don't love cooking anymore. I love to eat, but I don't love cooking. And I love to be with my family and friends and to party. And I just had a lot of energy, and I was probably in my prime, in my 40s now. I don't know why, but I had just gained energy from exercise and doing all these activities, and I was excited about my job. And suddenly, well, it wasn't really suddenly, it was a kind of a slow onset of fibromyalgia, and started in my neck, went down to my shoulders, down to my hips, down to my knees, my feet. And this was like a 1.5 year process at work. And slowly I just lost my energy. Instead of going to lunch with friends and on break with friends, I was searching out places under tables or desks that I could lie down, or any place where I could lie down. And so then after about, and the doctors didn't know what was going on with me that long ago. I went to doctor after doctor after doctor. Nobody knew. And then in where I was working, they replaced the ceiling because someone was complaining there was asbestos up there. So they did it over the Christmas holidays. And something told me, don't go back the day after everybody starts to work. We'd covered all our stuff up with plastic. But I came back and the place was full of something. And I had a slight asthma. Anyway, by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was so sick I had to go home. And it took me, I don't know, about 3-4 weeks to recover and get back to work. I just got back to work. I came down with the flu. That lasted for about another 4 weeks, and it was just like life was over for me. And my husband said, you've got to find someone to help you. Let's take you to the Mayo Clinic. I said, no, I didn't feel worthy of the Mayo Clinic, for crying out loud. That's for,
People are really sick.
Yeah. And my work was suffering, I was suffering, my husband was suffering, and finally he said, okay, I'm making you an appointment at the Mayo Clinic, you're going. And he sent me off to Phoenix, well, it's a suburb of Phoenix, where someone finally diagnosed me with fibromyalgia. And someone before had told me, a doctor before, I'm going too long, aren't I?
That's
You better
right.
time me.
Yeah, you might want to shift to tips pretty soon.
Someone, what?
You might want to shift to tips pretty soon, but correct.
Okay. A physical therapist had told me, no, a doctor had told me, I think you have fibromyalgia. And I told my physical therapist. She said, oh, that's a wastebasket thing that they tell you if they don't know what you've got, So I didn't believe this doctor. Anyway, so I finally had a real diagnosis. Lost my job, went on disability. Suddenly, I lost my friends because they were all skiing, camping, hiking, doing all those things. I couldn't do those things anymore. I could go out to dinner with them occasionally. Well, I came across, I read and read and read and read, and I came across the idea that creating a new life for me involves dealing with my emotions over my losses. Because I had strong emotions. I was in despair over all I had lost. I was in despair over my fatigue and the pain, because I have both fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. And I had to find happiness in new thoughts and new activities, and that wasn't easy. I was 50 years old. And then I came across this little Chinese fortune cookie yesterday, and I thought I should title this. Whoops, I just tore it. Sorry. But it's our happiness is intertwined with our outlook on life. And I had to get a new outlook on life because I'd identified myself so much with what I had been doing. And so I took stress reduction classes. They were fabulous. That helped me so much. They talked about so many different things in life that can help you not only reduce stress, but redefine myself. I learned meditation, and that was probably one of the biggest blessings in my life because I meditate at least twice a day. I don't do it the way they say in yoga classes. I recline on my recliner. I repeat words that'll help me stress down and relax and be calm. I have to lie down twice a day or I fall down. So that's my stress reduction time, that's my meditation time, and it's trying to get the blood back up in my head. Another thing I learned in the stress reduction classes was forgiveness is extremely important. And I didn't realize that I had been holding some grudges against some people. And I went through a forgiveness routine, and I discovered books. Here's one step, 12 Steps of Forgiveness. I found, forgiveness meditation. And when I went through that and got rid of some of these feelings toward people, it turned me into a different, happier person. So that's another thing I learned in the stress reduction. I learned that I can choose my own thoughts. And I didn't know that before. I thought, thoughts were things that just happened. And I went through a process of repeating over and over again, I can choose my own thoughts, I can choose my own thoughts, until finally I was able to start saying peaceful phrases. And I learned a lot of peaceful phrases out of this little book called Pieces Every Step by Thich Nhat Hanh, and a lot of other books. And I picked out all these wonderful phrases that could bring me peace and bring me happiness. And songs, just simple little, even little songs that I learned as a child. I still end up singing some of these songs to myself when I find myself thinking negative or unhappy thoughts. Keeping a daily gratitude journal. My grandson gave this to me, and I'm sure his mother inspired him to pick it out. It's called A Simple Abundance Journal of Gratitude. Gave it to me about 5 years ago, and it taught me new lessons in gratitude. And just every day now, almost every day, I skip a few days occasionally, but almost every night before I go to bed, I write down in just a little notebook at least 4 things that I'm grateful for. And it takes my mind off the things I'm not grateful for, and I realize there's so many more things, those beautiful mountains out there, that I can see them, that I can hear beautiful music. So many simple things in life have really made a huge difference with me. So I've continued this, and I hope to continue it for the rest of my life, being grateful for things and expressing that. And being a volunteer for Offer, that has brought me a lot of happiness in volunteering for Offer. And before Offer existed, I keep the database. That's what I do. That kind of helped me make a transition from being a computer programmer to I could still work on the computer. And so I keep the database. I did it for the fibromyalgia group. When it existed, and there used to be a CFIDS group, and so I've kind of continued that over about 14 years now, and it makes me feel more worthwhile. It makes me happier.
And it makes
So
us really happy.
And the little labels you got on your announcements, I made those, a lot of them anyway. There were a lot that I didn't make, but a lot I did. Another thing that helps me with my emotions is hugging my loved ones, being with friends, and meeting my friends at Offer. We have a little lunch bunch, some of us that I've met, and look forward to that once a month, meeting with them. And they're not downer meetings, they're not pity parties, they're uplifting. And, oh, I found something really neat that's helped me this month, and it's wonderful. I'm petting my little dog, It's just simple things that make me happy. And making greeting cards, that's something I can still do on the computer. They're not huge paintings anymore, and I center them around my little dog. So most of them have little dogs on them. Someplace there's a little dog on them. And the back of them are Days Doggone designs. And so that's created a new happiness for me. And I love to do that, and it makes me happy, and especially, when I'm feeling sick and I know someone else that's sick, to make them a get well card. That makes me feel better too. And just mainly being mindful of all that's good around me and all that's beautiful around me helps to take my mind off the losses, the pain, the fatigue. And just quickly, one of the things that has helped relieve my pain, and I heard this morning that you don't get rid of your pain, and I have to disagree with that, because I've discovered that I took some yoga. I had to quit that yoga class and turn it into my own yoga and mix it with some of the Western therapies that I had learned from physical therapists. And so doing gentle yoga and stretching my way out of bed in the morning and exercising my way out of bed has made a huge difference in my life. And also Qigong, I noticed Qigong was one of the classes offered. I've changed that and made it into my own Qigong mixed with Western exercises. And my fibromyalgia pain has decreased, I would say, at least 80 to 85% in the 15 years. So, this hopeless thing I heard this morning that it doesn't change, I disagree with. And I think that it's been mainly due to my gentle exercise routine and doing it continually. And walking my little dog. And the best thing that's happened in the last 15 years, I guess, is that I discovered that, I loved to dance when I was a teenager. And when I found my husband, he couldn't dance. He didn't like dance. And I, quit dancing. But about 2 years ago in a senior center, I saw an advertisement for ballroom dancing, and I said, please just come once and see if you can do it. And he did. And I helped with my daughter helped along with saying it's going to create new neurons in your brain, it's exercise and you can hug at the same time, So anyway, he's taken up ballroom dancing with me, and that has brought me so much joy, and it's brought him so much joy. He can dance, I can dance, and there are 76-year-olds, they're 10 years older than I am, that can out-dance me any day at the senior centers, but that's all right. I can do every other dance and be happy. So it's a matter of trying things, because I tried so many things before we finally found dancing together, and that's been really wonderful. So kind of to finish up, I'd want to repeat the phrase, our happiness is intertwined with our outlook on life. And that's why I told you so many of these emotional things. Not that I think it's an emotional disease, just that I think we can change how we feel and be happier, even though we've got something that's really awful. And another thought that I've always had was that our wellness comes by weaving positive emotional golden threads through many other threads of life. Got a lot of threads that I wish weren't in my tapestry, but I found all these other golden threads that I'm weaving through it, and burgundy threads, you know. And I think I've woven a new tapestry. I've woven a new life for myself, and it can be done. And I appreciate. I've gone over time, and I apologize to the rest of you.
Wonderful. Go ahead.
But I'm grateful for that Carol asked me to do it so that I could share with you that it's not hopeless. It's very hopeful. And what's wrong with the second life? You know, that's can be wonderful. So thank you very much. Oh, and my summary, I was really surprised when I turned this thing over and saw on the very back, Wellness Tips by Joyce Day. So it's kind of a summary of what I've been talking about today. And I hope I've inspired you to, that there's more ahead of you that's good. Thanks.
Okay, Peggy, go ahead. You're next. As Carol mentioned in the introductions, I am the mother of a daughter who is now 15 and has been sick with chronic fatigue syndrome since she was 12. I also have two other healthy children, a 17-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter. And I want to begin by acknowledging that I am in no way an expert on coping with chronic illness, but I feel I have been very fortunate to have learned so much over these last few years from other people who are far wiser than me in these matters, and I'm very happy to share with you the things that I've learned in the hopes that it will help some of you as well. Didn't look like there were any other parents out there of children with these illnesses, but I think it may be helpful to some other support people as well. I think that learning to live well with chronic fatigue syndrome has been an evolving process for us, and I realize that it continues to go on. I've read and been given some wonderful pieces of advice, but I think for me, it has taken living through this experience and having a real strong sense of the kind of life that I want to have for myself and my family that's made this advice finally sink in for me. As any other parent, I feel I need to be strong and positive and a good role model for my children. And I think that, besides the love that I have for my family, has been my driving force. I have read everything that I can to learn more about chronic fatigue syndrome, especially as it pertains to adolescents, and I think it's true that children with CFS are the forgotten population. Both factual data and inspirational testimonies like Joyce just gave to us have really given me a sense of empowerment. I've done everything that I can to ensure my daughter has received the best possible medical attention, and I think we've been very fortunate in that event, in that case. I think the first 8 months of her illness were the most difficult. We were lucky in that we were given a working diagnosis of CFS a month and a half into her illness. And I knew there was something terribly wrong with my vibrant, athletic 12-year-old daughter, who was also very accomplished in school, when suddenly she was too sick to sit up for more than a few minutes at a time, was very pale, had trouble making it up and down her stairs, had trouble dressing herself, lost 12 pounds in 4 weeks because of abdominal pain and a loss of appetite. So I was really relieved to finally have a diagnosis. I also felt determined that we were going to beat this thing, and I used those very words to my daughter on several occasions. But I soon realized what a powerful force CFS is, and I was almost insulted to see that it would return with a vengeance at times when my daughter was doing relatively well. I learned to treasure the days when she was feeling better, because they truly are precious. I also learned that one of the best things about CFS is that it waxes and it wanes. During setbacks, remember that better times will follow. And I think for me, it's taken living through this cycle over and over again to finally believe it. My daughter has continued to be positive, has never been self-pitying, has been incredibly adaptable, and has maintained her great sense of humor, which in and of itself has been very inspiring to me. I used to say I wanted my daughter back, the one who used to play soccer and downhill ski and have lots of friends to joke around with. But now I realize I have a child who is incredibly wise and mature and resilient, and I'm so very proud of her for that and very grateful. I think gratitude is a really important coping skill, a very helpful thing to have. I was able to say to my daughter during a recent bad flare that I look forward to better times. And for me, that was a big accomplishment to be able to say that to her rather than we're going to beat this thing. I still encourage her to cry when she needs to. And we sometimes talk about the things she misses since becoming sick, and this usually triggers tears from me. And I used to fight to keep those back, but now I know that it's good to cry and that I feel I need to be a good role model to her in grieving as well. School has been challenging, and if anyone has an interest in hearing how we've worked things out with that, I'd be happy to talk with you later about that, but in interest of time. Just a piece of advice I would give to parents, as well as I think probably to other support people, is let your child take the lead in how they expend their energy. My daughter has proven to be very sensible and has developed a real strong sense of her limitations. And at times she'll choose to overdo it, to overexert. And I take a big gulp, and I've learned to let her do that because she needs to have fun in her life as well. I know I can't do it alone, and at times I've needed to ask for help. And I am grateful that I have been so uplifted by the kindness and generosity and support of so many people, doctors, in particular Dr. Bateman, who my daughter is fortunate enough to see, school officials, family, and some key friends. A sister in town and a friend call me very regularly to check in, and that means a lot to me because I have found that you tend to be forgotten over time when you're dealing with a chronic illness. They also call my daughter at times when they know she's alone. Both my husband and I work, and that means a whole lot to me as well. We too have found the therapeutic value of pets. We have a great big white fluffy Great Pyrenees, who is my daughter's dog, who has been invaluable. She's gentle and has a very expressive face, and it's been a source of comfort for me to know she's there to keep my daughter company when we can't be there as well. Realize that just sitting with your child when they're not feeling well or just listening can be helpful. I'm just going to read through some of these. You can't really fix it and may not have all the answers. Your child may just need you to reaffirm that you're in it together. Try to maintain a sense of humor, and I have felt victorious in that even during some of the most difficult times, if we can find something to laugh about, I feel that we have a sense of victory over this illness. Did I say realize you may say the wrong thing sometimes? Maybe. Try to help your child understand that sometimes you need them to tell you how you can be most helpful, and that your intentions are always good, even though you may say the wrong thing sometimes. Communicate well with your partner and divide and conquer. I've taken on the role of manager of my daughter's illness, and my husband is more the taxi driver for runs back and forth to school, trips to the pharmacy, and the entertainment committee for our 11-year-old and 17-year-old when he allows that. And we trade off every now and then, which is important to both of us to do. Never give up hope. My daughter says she doesn't think too much about the past or worry about the future. She just deals with what's happening now, and I think that's a very helpful thing to remember. Try not to be angry. It's counterproductive. Use that energy through activism. Offer has a lot of volunteer opportunities. Agree to be on a panel like this one, even though public speaking is not your forte. Buy and wear the Offer Hope bracelet, which I have to say I have a special investment in seeing the sale be successful because it was my daughter's idea, and Offer gracefully accepted that and went through the effort of getting them here. They're only $3 and is, I think, a nice show of solidarity and a way to get increased public awareness about CFS and fibromyalgia and offer. Believe in the basic goodness of others. They may not understand CFS and say things that may seem insensitive, but that doesn't mean they're bad people. Finally, try to be flexible, maintain a good sense of humor, and remember that being adaptable is the key to wellness with or without CFS. That's it.
Does that mean I'm on the spotlight now?
Yes, you're on the spotlight.
Well, my name is Lloyd Gold. I was born here in Salt Lake Valley. I've lived here my entire life. Pretty interesting childhood. Boring. I was an only child. And boy, was I stuck up, self-centered, and just a little snot. I grew up thinking I knew everything. I came from a family where the doers do, the ones who can't complain. So when I started having symptoms of this, of course, I was told, there's nothing wrong with you. You just need to stick it out. It took me, I think, about 3 months from the first time I started having symptoms until the time my general doctor told me, okay, I've had enough. I can't deal with this. I don't know what's going on. You need to look somewhere else. I found Dr. Deborah Robinson, went to her, and I had been to, I believe, 8 doctors in that 3-month time, and each one of them had told me there was nothing wrong after 8, 10 blood tests and psych evaluations and everything else. Finally, I felt validated when I sat down with her, and instead of me having to tell her, this is what's going on, she could tell, and she told me, okay, I have an idea of what's happening in your life, what's bothering you the most. So I would tell her, and it was really nice to finally find someone that could help me with that. One of the biggest things that I have found, and this would be for the caregivers or those suffering from the illness, it's really difficult at first to deal with, especially if you come from a family like that, or if you let society tell you that there's nothing wrong with you. It's really easy to get into that mode where you get really defensive, you become very angry, and you shut off. It's not the best route. Take a step back. And again, that part you were just saying as well about, they're not bad people. It took me a while to get through that because I really started disliking a lot of people very quickly that were telling me, you're faking, there's nothing wrong with you. I went through quite a few different things. I can recommend as well. Know yourself for what you can do. Find out for yourself if you are suffering with the illness, because the doctor, when I went to Dr. Robinson, she told me absolutely no exercise. That's great for about a month. Then you start feeling anxious. You start feeling useless. You start feeling like, what am I doing? What can I do? Why am I not doing something? So I remember going through that, going to see her and telling her that very thing, and she said, if you feel okay enough, go ahead and try a little. Okay, my idea of a little was, because I'm an all or nothing person usually, walking 5 miles. I had 3 people stop and ask me if I was drunk, because it does that to you. I was down for 3 days and almost was hospitalized because it just wipes you out. For a while there, I also went the opposite direction and started thinking, okay, maybe I shouldn't do anything. You do have to fill it out, get an idea of what you can do. And as you both have said too, about the different times where it comes and goes, you have the good times, you have the parts that aren't quite so good. You do have to realize just because you're feeling really great right now doesn't mean you can do it all. But you do have to come to that. I think every person has to do that on their own, find out where their point is, where their level is of what they can do. And you'll find it. Trust me, you'll find it after you've gone through a couple of days worth of totally being down, you'll learn where it's at. I won't say don't listen to others when they tell you that, you know, you're completely up in the night, but don't let it change what you think you need to be doing. If you feel like, yeah, okay, I do need to be doing something with exercise, I do need to be doing something with studying, or I have certain things in my life that I would like to get involved with, don't let somebody else tell you you can't. At the same time, if somebody says that, don't turn around and say, well, I'm going to prove you wrong because I'm going to do it all right now. Doesn't work, trust me. You know, I wrote down some things, let's see, that I wanted to just kind of bring up as far as the big impacts of what changed in my life right off that I noticed. And again, the exercise part, can't do the same. As far as relationships go, and I'm speaking with anybody, doesn't matter, friends, relatives, doesn't matter. I noticed I started shutting off from people. And when I started to think about it, a lot of the reason why was because I couldn't do a lot of the things that I could do before, as far as being able to, stamina-wise, stay awake, alert, able. You know, I mean, if somebody was a skier or something, and that's what they did a lot of the time, they wouldn't be able to do it. As such, a lot of your relationships suffer because where people don't understand it, they think you are blowing them off. So you do have to kind of give room with that. And again, they're not bad people. They just don't understand. And diet. I tell you what, the diet on my end of it changed something very dramatically. I used to eat anything and everything. I had that seafood diet thing that goes on, you know, you see food, you eat it. It got to the point I still had that amount of hunger, if not more, but I caught myself quite often. I would go to like McDonald's or something and order 2 or 3 like meal deals because I thought, man, I'm starving. Take a bite, done. 1 bite, that's it, done. It's really hard to try and figure out for yourself. So as a caregiver, it's really, I'm sure, tough to figure out where somebody's going at if they're acting that way too. So it's pretty difficult to just jump off and say everybody's going to have exactly the same thing, because they're not. Everybody in here is going to have a little bit different experience with it. The depression part of it, it's very easy to get depressed. Again, part of it because of the part I was talking about where people tell you you're kidding, you know, you're making it up. It's all in your head. Just do it. Makes you very depressed when you don't feel like there's anybody that you can turn to that will understand you. Again, it turns into these parts where you were talking about too, about pity parties. Not the best thing in the world. And at first, I thought that was great. I was like, you know, this is my way of coming to terms and feeling like there are other people out there that understand it. But it wasn't. Yeah, there were people that understood the symptoms, but weren't trying to get out of that and trying to climb up and get better, feel better, and that. So it's really easy to get into that depression stage. I do recommend that when you get into one of those modes, try whatever works best for you to consider my life is different, and that's not bad. But what can I do right now that will make me feel better, like I want, you know, to move on? And when I was younger, I was pretty narrow. I did everything the same. Went to school, went home, you know, same hobbies, everything else. Since this, I've actually opened my world up quite a bit. Tried new things, looked at new things, learned new things, and I can't say I feel like the illness has been a godsend for me or anything. I don't think it's been great, but it has given me an opportunity to look at my life a little bit differently, and there are a lot of things now that I don't think I would have found or ever done. I got into a depression state where I was very suicidal, and it got to the point one night where that was it. I was done. I did not think there was going to be another day. And I thought about it for a minute. And I thought, you know, taking the religious part aside and just looking at what's there. If I end it, it's gone. There's nothing. Like, why? I can suffer through. No big deal. How long are we here? Such a short amount of time. Such a short amount of time. And even if it's heck and it's hard, there's going to be something that's going to make one of those days down the road really worth being here for. So I thought, you know, don't even entertain this idea anymore. Just move on. And I tell you what, I'm so glad I did. I am finally starting to feel better. I am to the point now where I think I've managed my chronic fatigue.
How long have you been sick?
I was diagnosed in April of 2002.
It's okay, that's right.
Yeah. And again, trying to get an idea of how much is too much, what can I do where I can do a little bit more, because sometimes as well I found not even pushing yourself, where if you do push yourself you start to get fatigued. There are also times I found where if you feel like you can do a little bit and you don't, it also comes back to bite you. So you have to feel and find out for yourself where it is that works best for you. I can tell you too, my finances, oh boy, let me tell you something about that. I was just in the point in my life where I had started working for a company where I was making very good wages for Utah. Just to give you an idea, the stock options for the company after 5 years were estimated to be $250,000. That was just the stock options. And I remember when I got sick and had to go out of work, the people that were telling me, you're faking it and you're doing this so you can get disability, I had to question, what would make you think that a job that I love, that would pay me that kind of money, I would give up and try and get disability to get $200 a month for? So it's really difficult, the different people trying to tell you that you have no idea what you're talking about. Really, offer has been really good for me. I don't know how much I've been able to do for
I
offer.
did really go get all these people just so they could brag about offer.
And
But I love it.
you know, everybody has their own thing, whatever you want to do, but just try and find something. I think that would be what I would recommend, is try and find something that would make you feel more, I don't want to say accomplished, but more like you are doing something you want to do. Taking your mind off of, I need to sit here and have a personal pity party all the time, you know. So that's where I'm basically at. I do feel like I'm starting to climb back out of it, so I can tell you, if you're just starting into it, there's hope. There really is. It's there. And there's also help with that. So.
Perfect, thank you. I'm going to have to apologize because as the other one ran late, we've got a few minutes. I mean, we can stay as long as you guys want, so, but if you've got some questions, keep them short, you know, and let us, if there's something that, you know, like if there's a particular symptom that maybe you'd like to see what we do, you know, to manage that symptom. Does anybody have a question or something like that?
I'm kind of to the point of shutting off, because if I try to explain it to anybody, they don't seem to understand. And yet, if I don't explain, I find myself saying, you know, I just can't do this right now, or I want him to understand it's not because I have the 24-hour flu. So I'm having a tough time trying to balance between closing off and not telling them anything versus saying stuff and not feeling like maybe I'll be criticized or they won't understand, because most of them have the thing, well, I just get a lot, you know, I get tired too. And
Something that I learned really fast in my illness is I had, well, in fact, I'll just say it was my father, the first one. I was an outdoor, hiked, you know, fished. In fact, helped him cut logs and build part of his cabin. I mean, you know, I was a very physical person. And when I came down with the illness, my father could not understand why I couldn't get in a car, drive 2 hours, and go up there and log with him and do stuff the boy thing that I wasn't a boy, but to do those kind of things. And so what I realized, and in fact I put a quote in mine. I have it in my sheet in the back here, which I stayed on here, is that that there are some people that will never ever understand, and those are the people that we need to just. Well, how did I put it in here? I said, accept it and don't waste your precious time and energy arguing for your limitations. And one of the things that I learned is I was like you. I thought, I just want them to understand. I want them to listen to me. I want them to acknowledge what it is. But what I realized is by accepting the fact that they are not going to be my support persons, that I find my support people in other friends, but that person isn't going to be that support person, and accepting that, I then began to build a better relationship with those people. And it's a really hard thing to do, is to accept that. But I think that's the answer, is that you want them to know and you want them to listen, but you can't force them to listen, you can't force them to understand. And that would be my feeling. What would you guys say? Anybody?
I think that's very good advice. Sometimes it turns out to be very worth your while to provide a little bit of education to someone, because there are people out there who can learn and who really care. So I think you just kind of have to weigh based on your relationship with them or what the interaction is. Because I found some people who did not know anything about my daughter's illness. I didn't either, really, till she got it. But have been wonderful sources of support for us. And she has come up with a line of what she tells people to. I mean, she's only 15 now, but maybe rehearsing what you'd like people to know, how much. I mean, people don't usually want to know a whole lot, but just how it feels best to explain your illness to them.
I have a friend that one day she said, I can always tell when you're hurting. I said, how? And she said, when I walk up and I say, gosh, how you doing? I go, oh, great. She said, I know that you're managing. And she said, but if I walk up to you and I can see in your eyes that you're hurting, she said, you always say, I'm fine. I had no idea it did it. But, we also sometimes, like she said, then I realized, okay, I got to change that answer, But I think it's coming prepared for that. When somebody asks you, how are you, then we sometimes take it as, oh, well, we don't even know whether they're really asking how we are or how we feel. And sometimes we take it like, oh yeah, they don't believe me. So it's sometimes when somebody asks something, it's how we relate to that question too that affects. But anybody else with a question? Okay.
I'm looking for a doctor that's taking new patients. I went to the website, I've called 6.
Okay. We actually have a few more names that are in. In fact, I'm hoping to get a lot of names from this conference, from our provider conference. Okay. If you call our office, I can't promise that we'll find somebody, but if you call our office, we'll see what we can do. Anybody else?
Well, I've just been diagnosed, but I haven't. I don't know. I've worked for the university and the med center up there, and that's just an area there. There's just a certain few of them that are starting to even remotely think that it might be a disease, and
some departments better than others.
I'm realizing I have had this. I've had different stages of it coming on, and since I was about 33, so I've had this a long time. And I went to doctors in the beginning and would ask, talk about my symptom, this and that, and I ended up feeling like I was what's the word? Hypochondriac, and so their opinion of me, I was just devastated because I wasn't, and so I got to the point that I stopped letting anybody know, just how bad things were, and I've gone to extreme lengths to hide how I feel, my fatigue, just terrible because of the judgments, because of the lack of support.
So do you hide the feelings to everyone, or are there certain people you hide the feelings from?
I pretty well, I would explain it away somehow if I'd be in a situation where I couldn't hide something, you know, but I
So
did.
the other, some of you, do you hide the feelings too? Do you find yourself hiding them from certain people but not others?
Yeah,
So who would you hide your friend from and not?
almost everybody.
Yeah.
So do you have somebody
Like at
that
work,
you would?
especially everybody
At
at
work.
work. They have no clue.
So is there a support person another person that you can share your feelings with?
Yeah, there's one.
Yeah. I think that's what we have, a lesson we always have to learn is that, you know, that we need to seek out, like he was talking about some of the friends that he lost. You know, I myself, I had friends that wouldn't ask me to go do things because they knew that I wouldn't be able. They'd say, "Oh, I was going to ask you, but we just knew you weren't going to do it." So, but what happened? It's kind of like, well, like Joyce said, we have our little lunch bunch group, and you know, I'd like to even, you know, let you guys know what we do. I mean, we basically we had just a bunch of us that started about 2 years ago, isn't it? Got that long more. Actually, we went to a conference and we're all standing out outside freezing to death. And finally, I said, "You guys, I can't stand any longer. Let's go meet for lunch." Often, what happens is you need to develop a new support system of people that you can talk to, so that like she can't talk to anybody at work. And she's probably able to realize that trying to talk to him isn't going to do any good, so she's already accepted that. But what she needs to do is find another little support system where she can call up somebody and say, "Gosh, let's go to lunch, you know, we just need to chat." You know, and it's almost like we almost have to redefine our friendships a little bit. And you know who your true friends are. I mean, I've got some friends, I have one girlfriend that has been my friend forever, and even when I got sick, she's always been there. And that's the important part of it. So has anybody else had that problem? Any solutions you guys have worked out? Okay, what about another question?
I've just been noticing and my husband too, most people are very, very active. They're not just like, all of you were very active. You know, you said your daughter was. I think that's an interesting correlation, and I know that's what my husband's depression is from, because he can't do the things that he liked to do.
And so you have to go, one of my other ones is that you've got to, how did I put it on here? You don't get bogged down in the I used to's, but change them to the I cans. And that's a really hard step when you are newly diagnosed. And one of you guys want to talk about that?
No, I was just going to say it's been very hard for my daughter, and I think it will continue to be something that she'll grieve over, but she is developing new interests. She can play the guitar. She has the orthostatic intolerance, can't be upright for long, but she can sit up and play the guitar. So I think it just takes a while to work through that and to discover things that there are other things you can do that can bring you joy and are, you know, special things.
It opens up new possibilities. That's what I always like to look at
That's
it.
probably what the beauty that he's talking about. Things I don't think my husband would do some of the things that I see him doing in the future if it weren't for this.
But
Yeah, actually the thing is that there is, you know, when you're first diagnosed, you're just in that crisis mode. And it's so hard to move, you know, out of that crisis mode, and when you start stabilizing yourself and, you know, and actually getting to the point where you're integrating your illness into a life, which, you know, if you listen to most of these people, they have integrated their illness into a life that you know, I mean, I look at it and I think all of us can agree, you know, we've created a wellness life, a whole different picture of what our life is. And I always like to think of treatment of these illness like a jigsaw puzzle, and you just keep trying pieces after pieces, you know. And and of course I always like to try it with, you know, get the border out, and then you get the blue sky, and you do all the blue, and it's just kind of like we just keep having to try all the pieces before we can come up with this wellness picture. And it often just takes time to move and to, you know, to learn the things, because each one of when we get our pieces together, puzzle together, our pieces are probably totally different. Each one of us uses different wellness techniques to manage our illness and to manage our emotions and handle it and create our life.
And I'd like to say as well on that part, that is the part where I was saying that when you first get into it, You start thinking, okay, it's all over, it's done, I can't do what I used to be able to do. As far as someone else on the outside too, looking at or being a caregiver for that person, it's very easy to look at that and say, okay, that person is telling me they're broken. Everything I'm being told by society and doctors is they're broken. What do you do with something that's broke? You fix it. Okay, it's not a fix. And don't try and push someone that has chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia into thinking that they need to do this and this and this, because then they'll feel okay. If they only do this and this in their life, then they'll start to feel okay because it'll give them something else to do. They have to find it. They'll find it. But be there for them, and if they say, oh, hey, that sounds kind of interesting, instead of saying, oh, well, you've never done that before, just say, okay. Because they will start thinking of things. After a while, your mind's you refuse to just sit there. And you feel like you have to do something. They will start thinking of things that they are interested in or think they might be interested in. And just be there for them when they say that. Okay.
Joyce, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to second what Carol said, because I can't tell you how many things I tried before. Like, for example, in art, I wanted so much to do some art, but I couldn't. And I can't tell you how many different things I tried before I came up with this, making cards. Or before ballroom dancing, I tried line dancing. It put me put me down for 3 days. And then I tried, but I think I could do it now because I've watched those line dancers, and I think I could develop a way that I could do my own, And I tried Tai Chi, and that put me in the ground. And I think now if I tried it again, I could. But I can't do all these things. So, and I tried doing yoga classes, and I had to make it my own yoga. And I tried Qigong classes. I loved it, but I had to make it my own. And it's just a try and try and try again. And I didn't used to have to try and try and try again. I used to be able to do what I tried, And it takes a while to be able to try and fail and try something new. And I just can't emphasize that enough to keep encouraging him to try it again, try it a little bit differently. Yeah, you can do it,
Anybody else with a question or comment? Okay.
I was just wondering if anyone else has had problems with blurred vision that just comes and then goes. Is that part of this?
Yep.
Where is it blurred? The whole field or off in a corner? Or?
Actually,
It just gets blurred like it's out of focus, and sometimes it lasts 20 minutes, sometimes it lasts hours. And I will misjudge doorways. I work in the medical field. I've walked around the corner, walked right into the doctor I work for. I walked right into the printer. I walked right into the receptionist, knocked her over, because my vision gets off and I can't see.
Do you have a balance problem too?
Yes. These are all, the vision and the balance have just started. But everything else has been going on for years, and I just had the stinking balance test and the ENG and all that crap, and now they're saying go have another CAT scan, another MRI. I'm just tired.
well, and the balance thing can vary. I mean, it can be a lot. I mean, checking out all of your medical options is a very important part of that too. But also, I think when
Well, it gets
fatigue hits,
expensive.
I don't know if although you'll agree. I know when I get fatigued, I lose
Everything
a lot of the
just
balance and the vision too. So, make sure you check out all the medical reasons why that might be happening. But I would say also that there is times, something that I was told by my eye doctor, to always tell your eye doctor that you have fibromyalgia. Because I don't know if any of you experiences, I wear glasses and I see a few other people wearing glasses, but often, if you ever say, when you go, is this better, is that better? Well, number one, my brain can't function that quickly from one to the other, and plus my eyes, I have a harder time focusing my eyes now than I used to be before. So they always, my eye doctor said, always tell a new doctor that that's what you have. Because if the doctor is familiar with fibromyalgia, they're going to treat your eye exam a little bit slower and a little more methodically, so that you actually do end up getting a good vision test. Go ahead.
In the earlier meetings, I made a decision right there that frequent tests are going to be our life, because you can't ignore that doctor said you can't ignore it because it might be something new. And so it's just going to be that way. And then so we just do things. We get books, we do whatever. I just made that decision that that's going to be life.
So I think you need to maintain a sense of vigilance. I mean, because there's so many symptoms with these illnesses, and yet you always
And
need
it's
to watch.
easy to
Could be
just
something
think,
else too.
Should I worry about this or not worry about this? You know?
Michael, my comment is to err on the side of caution. And I can tell you because I almost died a number of years ago because a doctor kept blaming some pain that I was having on my right side to fibromyalgia and a cough. And what had basically happened is I had ended up, my whole lung had filled with gel, and it ate the bottom of the lung down, and it was pressing on my heart, and by the time I was in the hospital, I didn't think I was going to make it. Luckily, obviously, I did, and I made it here. But a lesson well learned, I wrote an article for a magazine out of Arizona called Jumping to the Wrong Conclusion. And I think that's a very important lesson. I have talked to friends who have had kidney stones and bladder problems, and the problem is so many of the symptoms relate, especially in the lower tract area, relate to symptoms that maybe of IBS or irritable bowel syndrome or whatever. And so we have to really be aware of our symptoms and like you say, be vigilant. Did I say that right?
Vigilant.
Easier
There
for
we
me
go.
to say. Thank you very much. In our symptoms. So yeah, err on the side of caution, even though it's sometimes kind of embarrassing to walk in, because sometimes we think, oh, well, I don't know if I should be sharing you this, but just walk in and say, these are the symptoms I'm feeling, and be matter of fact about it. So.
Can I just add one quick thing?
Okay.
On the balance thing, I've had that problem too, and the blurred vision, but on balance, I've discovered that I have been able to learn balance over the years by standing on one foot. And kind of the yoga and Qigong has helped me with that. And it's been a long practice, and if I get sick for a while, have a relapse and can't do it, it takes me maybe a month to get back to where I was. But in my case, my balance could be relearned. But I'm not discounting getting it checked first, you need to do that.
One quick
Yeah, a quick one.
question. Has anyone ever heard or know of anybody that has swallowing problems?
That was one of my daughter's first symptoms. That was
Really?
so frightening. She would come out of the bath, she was 12 years old, and crouch in the hallway and say, I can't swallow. I thought, what in the world is wrong with you? She'd be as white as a sheet and have trouble swallowing.
It takes
Plus
so
her
long to
palate
get
burned
down.
too. And I was told when she made her diagnosis, these are all part of the viral syndrome. So,
Oh, see, I
hers,
thought that was something else.
yeah.
I'm going to just wrap this up for a minute. And those of you that, did anybody put any money in the drawing? Okay. The winners are, is there a Vivian Garcia in here? Okay. Is there a Cheryl Biker? Okay. Debbie Orton? Sean, there's no last name. Okay. A Dolly? No Darlene. Darlene Carson? A Jay Gillen? Lola? Ann? Sherry? Ben? Geraldine? Sue? Tana? Mervyn? I guess nobody in this room was lucky, was it? In the drawing. Did any of this help you guys? Did you guys feel comfortable, a little more comfortable, or was this?
It's helped me feel like I'm not alone.
Okay. If you have any other questions, I'll feel free to stay here a little longer if anybody wants to ask any questions. Thank you so much for coming. We sure appreciate it.